Hey everybody, a quick note about our precision medicine training program. It's been a really popular course. We're constantly hiring health coaches and physicians, but we're only hiring them as we grow if they're trained in precision medicine. You don't get that in medical school or other places. And so we've developed this training program, and we've completely revamped it recently. It's a lot more robust. So now there's still over 50 hours of live synchronous training. There's also all the asynchronous credit, over 50 hours of content. And as a physician, you get about 50 hours of AMA Category 1 CME credit, which is a nice benefit. For the health coaches going through the training program, it's now accredited by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. So graduates are going to meet the requirement to sit for the board exam and become board certified health coaches. So there's a lot of benefits to that, not just the certification, but also when it comes to things like insurance reimbursement. So it's a really robust program. If you're a physician, a nurse practitioner, a PA, or someone that just wants to be a health coach, it's open to all of those categories. There's the 6-month program that's kind of the full program. And then we also have just a fundamentals of precision medicine course, which is completely on your own. It's online. It's all asynchronous. You still get the 50 hours of AMA Category 1, but it's self-paced. And you still have access to the online community, but not all the synchronous lectures as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to wildhealth.com/education. And we'd love to have you as part of our next class.
Ben, Kristin, good to see you guys.
Good day. How are you?
I am excellent. Good day to you, ma'am.
Day, sir.
Greetings and salutations.
So, I had to hit record because otherwise we were going to just start laughing our way through all the stuff that we want to talk about anyway. And I figured we may as well share with the world. So we're here today. We have gathered here today to talk about a paper that I came across, and there's kind of a cool backstory here. So the paper was published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology. Authors are Kumar and Epley, and the title is "A Little Good Goes an Unexpectedly Long Way: Underestimating the Positive Impact of Kindness on Recipients." And for those of you who don't go looking into the medical literature, you might not be aware that there's this problematic thing where a lot of the medical literature is behind a paywall. So you can get sort of the abstract of a paper, but if you really want to look at what the authors did, you've got to pay like $40 for a PDF to be able to download it. And we could do a whole other podcast on why medical education and evidence should probably be open access. And a lot of people are moving that way, but this one wasn't. And I emailed the author and asked for a PDF copy of the paper and crossed my fingers, because if the author of the paper on kindness was like, no, sorry, you got to pay $40 for the PDF, I was just going to have to delete this topic from the podcast and move on. But, maybe not surprisingly, he responded in like 20 minutes. It was like, oh, great. Yeah. Have fun discussing the paper. Here's a copy. So that's the paper. That's what we're talking about. And, the abstract itself was kind of cool, but the paper itself was even better. So thanks to Dr. Kumar for sharing. And as we were meeting up and just assembling the team for the podcast, Kristin, you mentioned that you might have a timely story about an act of kindness.
Oh, wow. We're going to start there. Let's do it. Tell a fun story. You know what? I think instead of talking about the paper, we could just say, here's my latest random act of kindness and share.
Perfect.
I don't know. I'm kind of into it. So yeah. So after reading the paper that you so wonderfully got from Dr. Kumar, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to try this out today. No time like the present. So typically I take a walk after lunch here at the office, and I walk through a park and oftentimes find myself at a coffee shop. So I thought, all right, well, I'm going to because we'll hear about one of the experiments in the study involved hot chocolate. So I thought, okay, I won't do hot chocolate. I'll do coffee at the local coffee shop. So I put some money in a little envelope and wrote a little message. And my plan was I'm going to just walk to the coffee shop and give it to the person checking out, and they can either decide to keep it as a tip or pay for the coffee for the person after me. But I started to get a little more self-conscious about this plan as I was walking toward the coffee shop, thinking about, well, this isn't so random because I frequent this coffee shop a lot. They're going to recognize me and it'll have some downstream benefit to me. Like maybe they'll give me a, whatever, something free. I don't know. So I just started kind of getting in my head a little bit about it. On the way there, I noticed this woman kind of dressed in just plain clothes, looked a little bit older, like maybe retirement age, with a weed whacker, weeding this beautiful, large area of tulips and daffodils in the park. And I was like, I kind of would like to give this to her. But I was like, oh, she's like, can't hear me because the weed whacker's going, and she's like really in the thick of what she's doing, looking down at the ground. So I walked about 7 minutes away from her and then finally paused, thought about it, convinced myself that it was the right moment and the right thing to do, walked back, waved her down, got her attention through the weed whacking, and just kind of like brought the envelope towards her like some weirdo. And she was so warm and so gracious. No mention of how odd I was behaving like I thought might happen. And just went on to tell me that she donates 8 hours of her time per week to this nonprofit called Celebrate Lex. I mean, we had this lovely discussion about why she was out there and the things that she's really trying to do in the city. And it was just really nice because I could thank her for making this place that I walk through, most every lunch hour, even more beautiful. And I'm a big flower person, so it was really kind of a cool thing. So that fits into, I think, the topic of today, because one of the things that this study points out is that there are probably some psychological barriers that exist to prevent us as humans from engaging in more acts of kindness than what we might estimate as being within our value system of how often we'd like to do something like this, right? And so part of what they were trying to understand is, well, if we all think it's a good thing to do and we'd like to do maybe more of it, what gets in the way, right? So that's awesome. That's my story.
I love that story. I love that you were on your way to the coffee shop and you were like, well, now if I do this, they're going to think that I'm, angling to be their favorite customer of the month, get a free coffee or something.
Right. Also, I originally put it in a Wild Health envelope. You guys, this is kind of funny, but it's a donut shop. And I was like, this is off brand. I can't be buying donuts with a Wild Health envelope. So anyway, just go and do the nice thing is the moral. Don't be neurotic like me. Just go do the nice thing.
I love it. Well, so, I think it's timely to just jump straight to the experiment around the hot chocolate because, for context and, I can't share the PDF in the show notes, but I can share the link to the study. And then if you want to email the author, I'm sure he's going to go ahead and share the PDF with you. But there's like 6 or something experiments in this. I mean, there's a half dozen or more single experiments. And I'll just outline this one because I think it's a good jumping off point. It's timely with the hot chocolate. And it also, spoiler alert, all of the experiments kind of showed the same thing, which is what's really cool about it is they looked at it in different ways and got sort of the same takeaway conclusion. So this part of the study, this experiment, they conducted over 2 weekends at a skating rink in a public park in Chicago. They recruited 84 participants to give away a cup of hot chocolate to a stranger. Now, I was reading this, and just as an aside, my 12-year-old walked into the room and heard me talking about this with my wife and said, "That's weird. You can't take hot chocolate from a stranger."
Nice.
So, parenting win right there.
Yeah.
Of the 84 participants, so participants were told they could keep the hot chocolate or they could give it away to someone else as a random act of kindness. And this part was pretty amazing. Of the 84 participants, 75 agreed to give the hot chocolate away, and that means 9 people just got a cup of hot chocolate.
It wasn't just, Mike, it wasn't just that they said you could do it or not do it. The study conductors were like, it would actually really help us out with the study if you did give it away. They were like trying to push them in that direction, right?
We need a subset analysis on kindness in this particular population.
So some people were just really thirsty or really cold or just really liked hot chocolate, and they were like, I'd love to help you out, but this looks delicious. So of the 75 who agreed to give the hot chocolate away, they were asked to point out a stranger to receive it, and then they answered 3 questions about the act. So how big was the act? What was their mood like as a result of giving away the hot chocolate, and their prediction of the recipient's mood? And then they were able to survey the recipients and report the recipient's mood and how big the act seemed to them. The study found that participants felt significantly more positive by engaging in an act of random kindness, but that recipients perceived the act to be bigger than the folks giving the hot chocolate. And the recipients felt like it was more they felt more positive than the givers of kindness would have anticipated. And this is the result you kind of see over and over again in this study is I'm going to do a random act of kindness for Ben, and I'm going to say, this is, 5 out of 10 importance or bigness in terms of how much effort it took or how symbolic it'll be to Ben. It's going to be a 5 out of 10 in terms of making Ben feel awkward that I'm giving him a random act of kindness. But then when you survey Ben's like, oh, it's like an 8 out of 10 in terms of bigness, and it's a 1 out of 10 in terms of awkwardness. So we tend to think that people are we underestimate how important it'll seem to someone, and we overestimate how awkward the interaction is going to be. And I thought that was just really cool to see that in an actual study environment, and made me rethink sort of, man, I get in my head about doing things, and I just, it's never as big a deal. Like in general, it's never as big a deal to the other person in life as you think it is. But with regards to random acts of kindness, it was really cool to see that too.
Yeah, this particular experiment in the study made me think of a story too. So I'm going to share that. And then I'm going to ask you guys a question. So sit up straight and pay attention. When I was in seminary, I remember reading a story about an 18th century Hasidic rabbi that always had 2 scraps of paper in his pockets, his left and right pocket. On the one, he had a quote from the Talmud that said, "The world was created for my sake." And then in the other pocket, he had a quote from the Torah that says, "I am nothing but dust and ashes." And as he made his way through life, when the situation called for it, he pulled one scrap or the other out to remind himself of that dynamic tension in between those 2 quotes from, his scriptures. And this experiment made me think of that, right? Because hot chocolate is just dust. You put some warm water in it, and now it's like sweet ashes that you're taking to somebody. It's delicious and it's warm, but it's almost worthless. Like it's a cup of dust that you're bringing to somebody, right? It's almost nothing. But to the person that's receiving it, it feels like you didn't ask for this, you didn't order this. It's brought to you without any request, as if the whole world conspired to bring this to you. Oh, I didn't even realize how cold I was until you gave me this cup of hot chocolate. So what do you think is the thing that creates the disparity between our expectations and our experiences? Why is it that it's so difficult to live out of the tension in between those 2 pockets?
That definitely sounds like a question for a psychiatrist.
Definitely sounds like a question for, what are we calling you these days, Dr. Stone?
I'm not anything, Kristin. I don't know.
A philosophical, spiritual guru as yourself. I think that I'm going to punt to you.
I'm going to tell a story to answer that question. Yeah, Ben's happy as a clam right now. All
right. No, wait. Ben, why don't you tell us the right answer that you're looking for?
There is no right answer, Kristin.
I'm gonna give I'm gonna tell a quote that I don't know who to attribute it to, and then I'm gonna tell a story with a quote that I do know who to attribute it to. So the quote I don't know who to attribute it to is, "No one's lived the future that they've imagined." And that's something I say to myself not infrequently, because in terms of expectations, they're completely manufactured and they're just an idea and they're thought stuff. So of course our expectations don't match our reality, because we're just conjuring them from dust and then letting them dissolve into dust or hot chocolate ashes or whatever you'd like to drink, Ben. But one of the a relevant story for your story, Ben, and for this podcast is I had the best Uber ride of my life about 2 weeks ago while on vacation with my family. We all crammed into this car. We were out of the country. It was not big enough to fit our luggage, and we didn't really have a lot of luggage. So I'm in the front seat, kind of with a roll-on board carry-on wedged between my legs and my backpack on my lap, trying to be able to see over all the stuff. And the driver said, "Hey, would you guys like to..." Pretty broken English, but essentially like, "Would you like to pick from my magic hat?" He busts out
not what I thought you were going to say.
Well, I got a little nervous, but he busted out an upside down baseball hat with a bunch of crinkled up pieces of paper in it. And we each took a piece of paper from it, and they were all quotes. And they were, I got, "The truth is always the strongest argument," from Sophocles. One of the kids had an Aristotle quote, like just these amazing, insightful, succinct life quotes on the Uber ride. And I thought, this guy knows that we're doing a podcast about random acts of kindness. Somehow he knows that this is what we're going to be talking about. But we not only did it just, everyone read theirs sort of fortune cookie style. And it was a topic of conversation, and we all dove into discussing these things for the entirety of the ride. We talked about it after the ride. And I thought, sure, in the same way that you want to make it onto the, customer of the week board at your coffee shop, Kristin, maybe he just wants a better tip for his Uber trip. But the guy literally, people put bottles of water and candies and stuff in their car, and they do that if they're trying to make it a fun experience. This was really special, and it really impacted us. And I thought, this stuff really works. This seems really big to me. This guy probably, writes out a bunch of these, or prints them out. They were printed, and then just cuts them up and crimples them up. And it's probably not that big a deal to him, or maybe it doesn't seem like it, but it really seemed like a big deal to us. So, more than 2 quotes to carry around on scraps of paper, but really just was so impactful. So I don't know. My resolution from this paper is I bought a stack of actual cards and envelopes, and I'm starting to write out physical cards and envelopes and send them to people, which is something that, outside of maybe your husband's birthday a couple of years ago, Kristin, where you solicited actual cards, I don't think I've written one since then. So it's gotten me back in touch with that, which is, I think, really great.
That's awesome. So Mike, I'm so curious about this man. Did you ask him why he started the practice, or what other people's responses have been to it?
I tried to get kind of deep with him, and it turns out that my medical Spanish only gets me so far for being able to talk about life philosophy and deep stuff that isn't where does it hurt and okay, it's time to push.
Oh gosh.
So was desperately hoping to do that. But just thanked him effusively, and I think you could see on all of our faces and from the conversation that we really got a lot out of it. Absolutely.
So Ben, I've forgotten what your original question was, but because that story, I was so immersed in that story. But I guess what I would say, as maybe another takeaway from the experiments in the paper, that there was this idea that we parse out they're calling the competency of the act of kindness, which, the match to the person in terms of this is a gift that is uniquely situated for this person, is going to benefit them maybe more than some other gift you could have chosen, or has a value or a time stamp, that's just the right amount for this particular act of kindness, versus the warmth with which you give the gift. That maybe what gets in the way of the importance and the impact that this act would have on the other person is when we start to use our, project how well received, how much benefit they're going to get from it. Maybe we pay too much attention to the fit of the gift and not enough of the delivery and the kind of the warmth with which you deliver it to that person. And I can say that from I have another recent experience where I found this to be true for myself. So I had a friend, co-mindfulness teacher actually, who had a skiing injury, and was kind of holed up someplace recovering. And I really wanted to do something nice for her. And I, whenever I thought about doing something, I kind of was like getting caught up in like, okay, well that seems like not enough. And I really care about this person. And that, I kept kind of getting in my own way, trying to get just the right gift to send to her, that I almost ran the risk of just kind of like, getting busy with life and not doing it at all. And just, beating myself up 2 months later because I never did anything. Instead though, I just kind of pushed through and I found this book that, I thought would be meaningful for her and helpful for her. And, some Four Sigmatic hot cocoa. This is kind of full circle with the hot chocolate. I didn't even think about this before. Anyway, I sent it.
Mushroom hot chocolate.
Mushroom hot chocolate. Dusty hot chocolate than at the ice rink. Anyway, and I can tell you from her response, she wrote this lovely thank you note, text to me. It clearly was well received, even though, I don't know if the book, and I don't know how great the book was for her or not. But I think it went back to that idea of people care much more about the sentiment and the way that you deliver something than necessarily if it was the perfect fit. And that's what really elevates the mood and the impact it has on the recipient. And so trying to keep that in mind for these random acts of kindness, that really, if you can consider the warmth with which you deliver it, maybe even looking at past experiences that you've had when somebody's done something really nice to you. Did it matter that it was the right color or whatever? Or did it matter that it came at a time where maybe you're having a rough day, and it just, that really touched your heart that they did that and thought of you? It's one of the things I took away from the paper.
Love it. Wow, we're the interconnectedness of this conversation is kind of blowing my mind. But if we're gonna go back to the Hasidic rabbi, Ben, this conversation
doesn't it always?
Sort of, it always does. So I was raised in a Jewish household, so some of this stuff resonates. But there's this concept in Judaism of tzedakah. And tzedakah, I think the official meaning is righteousness, but it actually colloquially means charity. And in the way that the Jewish people can often overthink lots of things, there's like 8 forms there's like a ranking scale of like what is the highest form of charity, and then what is the second highest form of charity, and all the way down, because you couldn't just accept that charity is a pretty good thing. And I believe the highest form is to give a gift or a loan or a partnership of some kind that'll result in the recipient becoming self-sufficient instead of relying on others. So that's sort of a teach a man to fish sort of parallel. But what always stuck with me is that the second highest form is to give, and whatever it is, warmth, donations, etc., anonymously to unknown recipients. And I think that's really the parallels in what we see in these series of experiments, and that principle are really profound in the sense that it's just the act. It doesn't have to be. You don't need to get any recognition for it. The person doesn't. You don't need to know who's receiving it. There's just something magical about giving that in and of itself improves your mood, improves the mood of the recipient, and you don't even need to know each other in any way. And it's kind of a cool experiment, I think. I'm going to take this away from today's podcast to think about how to give something to someone where they won't know it's from me, but I also won't know who I'm giving it to. And there's some logistics involved in that I think are certainly solvable, but not obvious. But Ben, I have a feeling you're going to have a magical solution, and it's going to deal with mushroom dust and some sort of cryptocurrency. I'm waiting.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of, I'm going to issue a challenge to our listeners here and to you guys. I know for like a percentage of our audience, that's something that they want, challenges, but for everybody else, we'll call it an invitation. I'm going to invite our audience to the next time that you eat out at a restaurant, tip 100% of your bill and just see what happens. And here's what I'm thinking. Here's my rationale around this. So you go out to eat and you pay whatever you're going to pay for that meal. And there's this server there who makes themselves sort of dust and ashes the whole time in your behalf, so that it seems like the whole world was created for your sake. Oh, my glass is half empty, and suddenly it's magically refilled, and my kids' chicken tenders are reheated 3 times, and 5 spills are cleaned up, and I don't even have to pay attention to any of it. I can just focus on my conversation. This person's assuming dust and ashes freely. Like, they don't have to be there. It's not required of them in any way. They've decided to spend their time serving somebody. So you tip 100%, right? And what's the opportunity cost of tipping 100%? It's that maybe I can't eat at that restaurant a second time for the same meal this week, and I need to eat at home, which I could do anyway, right? Which isn't really much. It's like, the opportunity cost is really low there. Most of the time, I'm taking a to-go box out of there and I'm eating this meal tomorrow night anyway, right? Like, I hack the system and I get a 2-for-1 sort of deal. So really, if you do your accounting that way, it costs me nothing. I give 0, they get 100%. It costs me nothing, and I'm giving them everything. See what the response is like a few times doing this. It is typically a significant emotional event for that other person. But I've done this enough times now that what I like to do is to tip 100%, make it seem as if the universe was created just for that person, and then disappear before they get the chance to come and thank me. Poof, dust and ashes. So that they'll take all those positive feelings and all of that gratefulness to someone else in some other way. And I like to think that it's like this chaos theory fractal pattern of joy and happiness that just gets sent out into the world in a way that I don't ever get to see, but believe is happening. There's your invitation.
Awesome.
I'm gonna take you up on it, and I can't think of a better place to wrap up this podcast than a chaos theory fractal of joy and happiness. Thank you guys so much, and let's I accept your challenge invitation, Ben.
Yeah, me too, Ben. I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you found it helpful, give us a 5-star rating and write a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. If you want to be a client or you want to work with us, go to wildhealth.com. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you're a Wild Health patient, you might not know, but you have access to our referral program. This gets your friends and family 25% off Wild Health services. Just head to Clarity, and in the top right corner, you'll see Refer a Friend. Click there, and you'll be brought to a page with your referral code. Happy sharing.